This video is going to be a second look at the Chiefs offense, but focusing on a specific situation, I should say a specific personnel grouping. I'm going to look at the Chiefs usage, Andy Reid's reliance on 12 personnel and 13 personnel. There will be some data that I talk about early on in this video before we get to the film, so grant me some patience or grace with that one. I think the Chiefs are a sneaky good team under center and out of 12 and 13 personnel. And I think it's for the same reason that the Ravens' 21 personnel and 12 personnel groupings can and are so effective. And it's because Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce can be hybrid tight ends / slot wide receivers who can occasionally play the X wide receiver position as well. They can force defenses to respond with their base defense, be it 3-4 or 4-3 personnel, and then still utilize spread formations and spread concepts because of how good those guys are as receiving tight ends. Now, as an aside, for the Ravens, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely both would qualify in that regard as being hybrid tight end / receiving threats. So in my opinion, that's why so many people are justified in talking about the Ravens' threat of using 12 personnel and how effective it could be in 2024. But before we get to the film, I want to talk about some data that I found on a website. I think it's Sumer Sports. I'll try to link it up in the description. Extremely helpful and useful data related to personnel groupings and effectiveness out of those personnel groupings. Doesn't have yards per play, doesn't have first downs, none of that, but it has percent usage compared to the rest of the league, and it also has EPA, expected points added, and I will refer to that a little bit here throughout the video. So the Chiefs' 12 and personnel groupings in the last 2 years has been their most effective groupings. Now, it's been utilized less than 11 personnel. It makes sense. You got Patrick Mahomes, who can throw the football all over the place. Travis Kelce, a hybrid tight end / receiver, as I already established. So your 11 personnel groupings can be 11, or they can almost be 10. You can almost be operating with 4 high-caliber, high-level receiving threats. They are 62% of their usage in 2023 was out of 11 personnel. While in 11 personnel, you're talking about 26% run and 74% pass. So very heavily skewed towards the pass in 11 personnel. The league average usage of 11 personnel, let me get to the data, my apologies. The league average usage for 11 personnel was 62.5% in 2023. So the Chiefs were one of a ton of teams that were around that 61 to 63% usage in terms of 11 personnel. The 2022 data is displayed above. The 2023 data is displayed below. What I want to talk about is the 12 personnel data from 2023 at the bottom. It should be the second one from the bottom for 2023. They were 4th in the league in usage. Noah Gray is a really underrated tight end to pair along with Travis Kelce. They have other guys that contribute as well. They were +8 above league average usage. League average usage for 12 personnel, I think, is 19%. If I saw it correctly, 19.2%. And the Chiefs are at 28% roughly, almost 20. I think it's 27.7. The rushing EPA, expected points added, is actually a subtraction compared to the rest of the league, the rest of the NFL. So it's not like they're really tearing it up running the ball from 12 personnel, nor for that matter do they appear to be running the ball effectively from 13 personnel. It's the EPA rush column. It will be the 4th from the right all the way down bottom. Perhaps I should enable my cursor for my streaming laptop, so forgive me for that. It's the passing game that is incredibly effective. According to these rankings, according to these stats, perhaps you don't use this website, perhaps you don't, refer to it. I have referred to it for a couple of years for just personnel usage. The EPA stuff didn't necessarily appeal to me. However, when I got into the film in the offseason, I saw how effective they were at throwing against teams' base defenses at times, and I realized there was something to this in terms of it may be quite intentional for Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes to get your base defense on the field, responding to 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends for the Chiefs offense, and then throw the ball against it. The EPA for 12 personnel in 2023 for the Chiefs was 0.22 per pass, excuse me. That pushes their EPA overall for 12 personnel to 0.1 or 0.10, I should say. Compared to 11 personnel overall EPA is 0.01. It's the highest on the team for personnel grouping for 2023. If you backtrack a year, you still have data that is somewhat commensurate, although the 11 personnel data for 2022, this is all the way up top, 11 personnel usage rank was 24th in the league in 2023. That's just the usage, the deployment, how often they're actually putting one running back and one tight end and three receivers on the field. It's the EPA rankings, I think, that are notable in 2022. First in 11 personnel, first in 12 personnel, you can see that 0.22, and then first in 13 personnel. And you may say, well, how often are they doing that? Look at the data from 2022. You're talking about, I think, 38 to 39% of plays were out of 12 or 13 personnel. And then in 2023, you had about 35% of plays were run out of 12 or 13 personnel. It's a significant focus of this offense, in my opinion. And it's a challenge, I think, for your defense, and it will be for the Ravens, to get their base defense on the field and try to defend against the pass, which if you were just to focus on this data and this data as the lone data point, you would say they certainly appear to be more effective throwing the ball out of 12 and 13 personnel than they are running the ball out of 11 personnel. The relative weaknesses of each group, if you were to accept that. I don't really accept that. I think there's been teams throughout the history of quote spread football that are spread to run, meaning we're putting 3 or maybe 4 receivers on the field to run the ball, and then they're spread to throw. At the NFL, I think Andy Reid and those guys and many offenses are both spread to run and spread to throw at different times. But this data appears to line up with the film that I have seen and film that I've tried to study over the offseason that shows 12 and 13 personnel can at times, with far less usage from a percent overall standpoint, be actually more effective than their 11 personnel groups. Now, they've tried to change that dynamic, obviously, by drafting Xavier Worthy and then picking up Marquise Brown in free agency. So as we go through the film here, we're going to look at under center concepts first. What you're going to notice with most of these is 2 tight ends. Again, we're going to focus on 12 personnel pretty much, to be honest with you. Reverse pivot by Mahomes is often systemic to everything they do under center, meaning so he's going to reverse pivot out. Sometimes he'll kick back the opposite direction and boot the other way. It's not that this play is necessarily effective, to be honest with you. I'm just giving you as a fan intel on what to look for, what to expect if and when you see the Chiefs under center and 2 tight ends on the field on Thursday night. Run game effectiveness not overly attractive here. I do think you have a lot of really nicely schemed up plays out of 12 personnel to take advantage of the defense to the boundary. This happens to be one of them. And look, the Bills have been a base nickel defense, meaning 4-2-5, 4 defensive linemen, whether you want to call Von Miller and Rousseau outside linebackers, DNs, whatever. They're edge defenders, so 4 up front, 2 inside linebackers, and then the nickel defender is part of the 5 DB core. That is their base defense. Tacking away from the nickel defender is something I talk about often, but this is an example of 12 personnel. So how can you reliably do that? Well, you know what the Bills run. They run a nickel defense. From a Ravens standpoint on defense, are they going to respond with their nickel against Travis Kelce and Noah Gray? I'm not sure that they will. I think it'll be situational. You defend the down and distance as well as the personnel grouping and the formation. So it's all things considered. Reverse pivot by Mahomes, again, 4 to a side, which is something I talked about in the first preview. And this happens to be into the boundary. Again, I think this has something to do with the fact that the Bills love to stay in a too high safety structure. It's a 1st and 10 in the playoff game. They love to stay in a too high safety structure, and they have the nickel defender on the field, So he will not be a part of defending this 4 to a side, meaning those 4 receivers there. I think it's pretty obvious. You just got a clear out concept here. Just trying to just pull someone away from the coverage. It gets Kelce isolated on a Mike linebacker who played better in that game than people gave him credit for. I remember on social media seeing how horrible he played. Look, he's put in some really rough situations from a defensive standpoint. This is virtually impossible to defend with modern zone defensive, particularly split field structures. When you get 4 receivers to a side, you're not going to be able to account for that. The Chiefs do a great job of scheming things up. I think I established that in a previous video. I call this heavy, meaning 2 tight ends on the field, 1 to each side, and they're both in line. So you've got 2 receivers off the line, Rice and MVS. Heavy indicating 2 tight ends, both in 3-point stances. Traditional reverse pivot by Mahomes. Potential for him to boot off of it out to the right. I think Reed runs just enough of this stuff, this under center run stuff out of 12 and 13 personnel, just enough to cause you as a defensive coordinator to constantly consider or think, should I put the base defense out there, whether it's 4-3 or 3-4, on a 1st and 10, 12 personnel, or should I go nickel? And I think it's obvious that Patrick Mahomes has the ability to change plays whenever he wants to, and he's got incredible recall if you just listen to him or other people talk about him, to be able to change plays depending on the defensive front. My point in talking about this ad nauseum under center is consistently you see reverse pivot, running back flow to the side Mahomes opens up to. We're not talking about predicting run or pass or predicting direction. Who cares? I'm trying to give you intel as a fan what to expect if you see 2 tight ends on the field. Now, this also gets to the point that the broadcast partners for the NFL don't tell you that there's 2 tight ends on the field. They should. They should give you indication of what the defense's response is as well. I don't know what most people prefer to see. My suspicion is that most fans have been normalized not to expect to be given information like tight ends, running backs on the field, and base defense or nickel or dime defense reaction by the defense. I feel like Amazon is the one exception to that rule. Generally, broadcast partners are not looking to give us as much information as I would like to have. Maybe you're in a different, a bank there. That's no problem. In my opinion, I'd like to get as much information as possible. A significant portion of the threat that the Chiefs pose is Pacheco running to the boundary. And, he's dangerous to the field and on screens too. It runs extremely hard. If you are going to tackle him, you have to wrap him up. He is a physical runner. I really like his game. For them to be able to get him in the 7th round is just amazing value. But into the boundary, when you have the bigger receiving threats lined up to the field, regardless of who it is, whether it's Worthy, Marquise Brown when he gets healthy, Rashee Rice, lining the ability out of 12 personnel to run the ball into the boundary where there's only 1 tight end. This is a difficult thing to deal with for any defense, whether you're in your base, whether you're in your nickel. The Bengals have generally been a nickel team in most situations. They're responding with their nickel here. They have created a 5-1 look with the inside linebacker. And the Chiefs are able to block this up, and they feel like they've made improvements along the offensive line with drafting a rookie left tackle. We'll see. But nonetheless, they're effective at running the football, just enough, I think, such that it forces you to try to account for the situation down in distance and location on the field, along with the personnel grouping as a defensive coordinator. Little cheat play on 1st and 10, very unique to be doing this on 1st and 10. And what I mean is you're oftentimes seeing the running back go out into the flats to the right and the quarterback reverse pivot to his right. Some other complementary routes existing out here, maybe a deeper China out or whatever you want to call it. But the Chiefs, number 1, do this to their left here and to the field. And number 2, they do this on a 1st and 10. So I think they're trying to get the ball to Pacheco and or possibly to Kelce against the nickel defender, Taron Johnson. Kelce doesn't appear to run the route for whatever reason. Probably something they talked about in the huddle. But in any case, most of the time you're going to get reverse pivot from an under center situation with Mahomes, and then some type of play off of that is to the side he opened up to. Occasionally you'll get throwback screens. Haven't seen any trick plays yet where he reverse pivots, unless we're talking about inside the 10, inside the 5. I'm omitting those from any analysis or evaluation because everything that Reed does is so unpredictable in that situation. So now let's get to still 12 personnel, but now both of them are in the backfield. It's going to be a diamond formation, pistol diamond. And this, to me, is where you have some real slick planning by the Chiefs in that you're oftentimes getting full flow with both tight ends, and that's what you're getting here. Kelce running a route in the 83, checking up to block with split flow by the tailback. So you got this very real splitting of the three backs. Two of them are tight ends and one of them's a running back. 7-man protection scheme, which gives Mahomes a little bit of time because his back is turned from the pistol for long enough such that the DB, in this case it's a corner blitz, very interesting coverage by the Broncos. Just to let you know, it's a corner blitz, but everything else here from this corner blitz looks normal except you have two defensive tackles dropping out and you've got a wide open receiver over here. So it's always interesting to me, like divisional opponents, how they defend teams that they play twice a year over the course of multiple seasons. You got a wide open MVS as the number one receiver, the inside linebacker pushing out to the tight end. Ends up being a fumble caused. Another example of diamond formation, this one probably more well-known. You've got Kelce running directly between two of the linebackers for the Bills, and he ends up being isolated on 52, or at least the interpretation of it is that he's isolated on 52. Again, a little play fake here to the tailback. Kelce's running, splitting between 52 and 42. Neither one of those guys touches him. One of the things that just irked me to no end with the Ravens trying to defend the Chiefs last year was absolutely nobody touching Travis Kelce. That has to be more of a focus this year, regardless of whether it's effective or not. You're talking about the cumulative effect of actually touching a receiver / tight end and forcing him to work harder first, second, third quarter so that there may be perhaps less energy in the fourth quarter or even earlier. It's 2-man, I think, by the Bills. Got man pretty much across the board here. And then safeties at depth on the 1st and 10. Really unusual play call from a defensive standpoint on a 1st and 10 with both of those guys in the backfield. In any case, another example of how they get the ball to Kelce in specific situations. That's all by design. I think he had 2 routes there. They're pretty much clear outs routes. And look, it's not like they don't run the ball out of this formation. Okay, when you see 2 tight ends on the field, if you're paying attention pre-snap, and you can glean it. Again, I don't know that the broadcast is going to give it to us. They will run the football, and like I said, Pacheco is a dude that is very difficult to tackle. You certainly can end up on the wrong side as a safety trying to fill one of the interior gaps. They have a very balanced offense now, if you ask me, with Pacheco, Kelce, Rice, and then adding Xavier Worthy and Marquise Brown. How much of an addition or subtraction is Marquise Brown compared to MVS? I really think you have to look at it in terms of MVS compared to Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy together. Those guys, if you ask me, give the Chiefs the ability to stretch the field and maybe get Mahomes' yards per attempt and yards per completion back up higher, back to a more normal level than it was in 2023, which was the lowest of his career. If you accept my assertion that I think that Reed and the Chiefs are oftentimes going 12 personnel to elicit your base defense as a response and then try to throw the football against you, then these are the types of plays where the game could be won or lost. It's quite easy for me to say that about any situation in Thursday night's game, but the Chiefs have the ability out of 12 personnel to give you basically a run side. Here I think you have Noah Gray to the top side as a tight end, and then a pass formation, spread pass formation to be specific to the bottom side. You got trips with Travis Kelce as the inside or slot receiver running a little snag and a bubble to that side. Now, it could be a read as an RPO. It could be a pre-called play to make it look like a read. Who knows? We certainly have guys releasing up to the second level to run block here. Point being, the Chiefs have the ability to line up under center in 12 personnel. The pistol diamond stuff that I showed you earlier leads into this here, typical shotgun formations. Oftentimes you're seeing both tight ends put into the boundary. In this case, you got Kelce and Noah Gray up to the top side and 2 receivers down to the bottom. One of my favorite formations, I call it twin wing. You may have your own names, but twins to the bottom side of the field is the passing strength for the formation. The wing to the top side, tight end / wing, or in this case, 2 tight ends, would be the strength of the run formation. This play only goes for like 4 or 5 yards for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I don't think will play. But the point is, if you can keep the base defense on the field, then you kind of force a rotation by one of the two safeties that are on the field. If it's your base defense, you're talking about a 3-4 or 4-3 structure. I actually think that the Broncos have their nickel defense on the field here, but nonetheless, they have the ability, or they think they have the ability, to control you no matter how you respond. I think the Ravens' job, Zach Orr's job, is going to be give Mahomes and Andy Reid different looks, nickel slash base against 12 and 13. I really feel like 13 personnel, you're forced to go with your base excuse me, with your base defense on the field and then adjust from there. Mahomes and those guys, he personally has the ability to audible to any particular play. If it were me, I'd want to make them run the football. And having said that, look, I've already established what I think of Pacheco. Extremely talented guy, runs hard, very difficult to tackle, seems to get a lot of yards after contact. I would not want to open myself up to situations like this, giving up big plays from a general conceptual standpoint. I think you've got to avoid allowing yourself to be outflanked in the run game or outnumbered in the pass game. And so this is a cover 3 by the Bills, 4 under here, kind of misshapen. 25 is playing a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage than maybe you'd like, and you've got deep third responsibility for these guys. I don't think the backside safety, I think it's Hyde, is getting over to the trip side at all. If it's not cover 3, then you've got a really poor job by one of the safeties to the top side at staying to the second level, releasing Kelce. I mean, this is just outnumbering you at the point of attack. There are certain coverages, a bland, vanilla version of cover 3 to trips you're not going to be able to play against Mahomes and against a lot of NFL quarterbacks because they're going to occupy the corner to one side with a route that's deep enough to threaten him and then bring a second route through such that that corner can't play both of them. It's just a high-low on a third-level defender. Oftentimes high-lows are on a strong safety, a nickel, or an inside linebacker. This happens to be what I would call a high-low concept on the corner who is playing at depth and going with 12. I think that's Hardman. So I don't know. You may have a different opinion. You may say, Coach, I'd like to be in my base defense against 12. I feel like the Ravens in their nickel with Kyle Hamilton as the nickel might be the answer against 12 personnel. And it's entirely obvious that that could be the answer for pretty much everything you see in 2024 if everyone is healthy in the secondary. Marcus Williams, Eddie Jackson, and Kyle Hamilton. It may be in the best interest against 12 personnel to put Kyle Hamilton on the field as that, quote, big nickel people refer it to. Falls in the middle of the field here, which is somewhat rare, to 2nd and 13. Speed out by Kelce. You can see that they trust Mahomes to get rid of the ball quick. You got quick concept here, little sit-down routes, basically just reverse of snag flat. And then potential for a third route to that side by Noah Gray, the other tight end, a little bit more of a corner route to the back pylon. I'm trying to focus on the game within the game with some of these previews, and the 12 personnel focus was, for me, something that during my research in the offseason caught my attention. And then when I compared it or contrasted it, I guess, with the data from that website, I think Sumer Sports, that was confirmation to me that this was worth my time. I call this the star concept. Other people have different names. I believe that they're just trying to isolate an inside linebacker in the middle of the field with someone. Sometimes it's a tight end. In this case, it is Kelce, and that appears to be where Mahomes is looking. He can't find anything. I like this combination from the standpoint of stretching corners horizontally and vertically with these vertical concepts that are bending towards the sideline, and then also trying to stretch second-level defenders horizontally as well with these underneath concepts. I think that from a conceptual standpoint, what they're trying to get done, and I have no idea what Madden or college football calls this stuff, is they're trying to create a box in the middle of the field such that Kelce, or a wide receiver at times, is one-on-one with an inside linebacker, trying to create space, and Mahomes and him, whoever that player is, are trying to just read it and beat that player. In this case, the Broncos they react to it or overreact to it maybe, leave the receiver open into the flats. I think it's Jerick McKinnon, who's since gone. Mahomes doesn't take it, ends up, I think, throwing the ball away. It's a 3rd and 14. I love the concept. I'm not a saying that I've used it before personally, but from watching NFL games, it is one that is very interesting to me, trying to isolate in the middle of the field with a matchup that's to your benefit athletically. One of the better throws that I've seen Mahomes make in my offseason film study of him. This is a 3rd and 13, week 8 against the Broncos. The Broncos and the Raiders both played some really good football against the Chiefs, made things difficult on him at times. This, I believe, is essentially a Tampa 2, and Mahomes throws it over the top of the corner, close enough to the sideline such that the safety, in this case Justin Simmons, can't react. You also have someone inside here between the hashes running with the vertical. Mahomes has thrown this thing off his right foot, almost off the wrong foot, I should say, and completes it to Watson for, I believe it's a 32-yard gain. I put out these 2 videos on the same day, focusing on the Ravens' 12 personnel options with Likely and Andrews, and then conversely, how the Ravens may defend Kelce and Noah Gray or whatever other tight end the Chiefs run out there. I think it's interesting which tight ends the Chiefs keep on the roster every year. It seems to me to be hiding in plain sight almost for the Chiefs, such that their offensive efficiency, EPA, if you will, expected points added. I don't pretend to know all of the formula to determine it, but what I did realize or recognize quickly from watching the film was that 12 personnel, 13 personnel as well, seemed to be a way that they attacked with the pass game. It seems paradoxical, but when you think about getting someone's base defense on the field, I think that kind of opens up a wider net of potential options for the Chiefs to exploit or take advantage of because of Travis Kelce's unique skills and then Mahomes' ability to put him in the right spot to attack a particular guy. You guys have to let me know if you appreciated these previews at all. We'll have one more that'll be out about on the Ravens defense specifically and what I see. So this is I guess, a trio of preview videos focusing on the Chiefs offense and the Ravens defense. I do still suspect or think that in order to stop this team or slow them down, particularly in Kansas City, you've got to do something to deal with Kelce, Rashee Rice, and Pacheco. Those 3 guys are a triumvirate, if you ask me, that spearheads their talent. Xavier Worthy adds playmaking and speed down the field, big playability as well. In my opinion, when they go 12 personnel, Kelce becomes an almost bigger weapon because he can line up at tight end, in line, off the line, slot receiver, or X receiver and threaten the defense however Mahomes and Reed want him to. You guys let me know what you think of the video in the comment section. The plays that I chose to try to illustrate the unique offense that the Chiefs run out of 12 personnel, mainly because of the versatility of Travis Kelce. If you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this preview, this look at the Chiefs' 12 personnel offense, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.